Hello. Welcome to the May 30th, 2025 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could simply ask questions in the live chat field or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify a few things that's often helpful, which version of Cubase you're running. So if it's Cubase LE, AI, Artist, Elements, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs with their version or level. Also, what version of the software you're using. So if you're running Cubase, if it's 12, 13, or 14, and which operating system. That information is often helpful. I will try to get through all the questions asked chronologically, and sometimes I may not be able to answer all questions in a real-time manner. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, we will get to it within the time frame. And if we could avoid asking the same question repeatedly, that would be appreciated. We should have an index of all the topics that are discussed with timestamps pinned to the top of the comments field. So you could look for that and as a reference. And if you wanted to search for topics been covered in previous live streams, it's over 39,000 topics. You can go to cubaseindex.com. We want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that site. We have two people that serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They do it out of the goodness of their hearts. So we want to give special thanks to Jazz Dude and to Agent K. And also we'll give special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host today. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. This is the last live stream of the month. So we will go for about 2 hours today instead of our customary 4 hours. And then we will do our Zoom meetup. So if you haven't attended like a Zoom meetup, it's a great way to meet other people that are on the live streams. I posted a link at the very top about an hour ago. I will go ahead and paste that link one more time just so people can join, and it's a great way to meet other people. It's always fascinating discussions. I look forward to doing them at the end of the month when we do them for our also, just one other quick programming note. I will be going on a trip Tuesday with my son for school, so we're gonna move our normal Tuesday's live stream to Wednesday. So instead of Tuesday next week, it will be on Wednesday, same time, just one day later, and we'll do Wednesday and Friday for next week. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility with that. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we see Stefan checking in from Sweden. We have Michael Amponsa joining from Ghana. We see Jazz Dude on. It's great to have him on. Appreciate so much everything he does. We have Roland Stuff checking in from a sunny south coast of England in Sussex. We have Memento from Finland. We have Barry Chabala checking in from Albuquerque, New Mexico, the United States. Tony Trunzo is just saying hi to everyone from Australia. So we have Rick France from Pacific Northwest. We have Flyvy from Winnipeg, Canada. We have the artist known as Love checking in, I believe, from New York. He wants everyone to hit the like button. We see Matt Elston on. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Index. We have Marvin Earl joining from Newport, Rhode Island. Okay, Roland Stuff has the first question of the day. It says, "Hi Greg, I'm trying to import key switches for Iconica Opus instruments, Cubase 14 Pro. I can see them in the inspector, but not in the expression lane in the lower editor window. Many thanks." Okay, so let's go ahead. So let's say if I have one of the sounds from Iconica here, so I will just come right over here. So right now, and we look at our key editor. And we go to our articulations. We're not going to probably see anything. So it's going to be blank there. So what I'm going to do to make this work is if we just go into the editor and we'll see in the inspector, what I'm going to do is just to choose import key switches. Now, once those key switches have been imported, we can see that immediately that they were just kind of loaded up and populated when we see the articulations available. So make sure, one, that when you click, the default setting may be set to velocity. But once that the key map, the expression map, is visible here, so make sure it's visible there. And I just did the import, and then we choose to view the articulations and dynamics. Now, when we go to our key switches, we can see all the key switches right here that correlate directly to the expression map that was created from the Iconica Opus instrument. So let me know if that works for you. All right, great to see Terry Gray checking in from Minneapolis, and Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. Let's see, Terry says he's running Nuendo right now to do score. So yeah, I saw your post on Facebook this morning. All right, so you see Watch Addicts 2. Maybe this was part 2 of a question. So what I see from Watch Addicts 12 is in my ears, and yet loading Apple Music Player, left and right speakers are sounding. Should reinstall Cubase. So I think we may miss the first part of your question, Watch Addicts. So maybe if you have the capability of re-asking a question, maybe if it was long, you may have a 200 character limit, but maybe if you could re-ask the question, we could get it. All right, we have Raw Justice Hip Hop just checking in from Capitol Heights, Maryland, not far from me, just across the river and a bit north. All right, we have wonderful to see Jason Sykes from Barnsley, England. He says it's been a while, so it's great to have you back. Hope you're well. And we have Paul Claypool checking in from Burbank. Suede TV and recording from New Jersey. And we see, not sure if I mentioned Jan from Cubase Index from Stockholm. All right, and we have Manfig checking in from Santa Barbara. So Manny from Santa Barbara. All right. Okay, so cycling is awesome. It says, "Hi Greg, I switched from Cubase 11 to 14. Now some of my plugins from SoundToys disappeared. They should be VST3 and they are not on the block list." So I think SoundToys was pretty late to get all of their VST, all of their plugins ported to VST3 format. They're one of the later companies, if memory serves right. So make sure that, when you make sure that they are VST3 plugins. They had just... So there's a chance that, and if you're running, and one thing to check is if you're on Windows platform, If you come here to your studio menu and go to your VST plugin manager, you'll see a little thing, and I'm running natively on Apple Silicon, so VST2 plugins don't work. But you'll see a little box here for VST2 plugins. So try to just turn that on in Cubase 14. Then you could enable VST2 plugins and do a rescan just by clicking right here and see if they show up. And then once you look at it, you could see exactly which VST version that the plugin is, just right here. Okay. See Jan from Cubase Index giving Jazz Dude kudos for the Cubase Nation Discord. Great. We have Reinhardos saying hello from Germany. Thanks for joining us today. Let us know what part of Germany you're in so I could visualize where you're at. But thanks for being on. All right, Watch Addicts 12 just says question number 2 from Mark Meter, Little Rock. It says previous to figure 8 symbol first appeared to be nowhere. I opened the mixer and found it. Ultimately, I found it in a couple of places. When I click on it, it simply arms the track for record. I get no toggle from mono to stereo. Right click, lots of options, but mono stereo, any plugin it shows up shows to be as he continued and looks. All right. So I think maybe what this is, and when we see a particular audio track here, so let's say if we have a mono file, I'll just open up a quick project here. Okay, so it's not necessarily like a right-click option. So let's say if, and this is added in 13. So let's say if I wanted to take this monophonic vocal here. All right, and so I'm going to take this monophonic vocal, and as we would get my key. So right now this channel is mono, and so it's a mono audio file that's on a mono channel. If we wanted to switch this to stereo, we just click right here, and this maybe this is the figure 8 that you're talking about. Now the channel configuration, now it's a mono file that's playing on a stereo track. Now where this makes a bigger difference is when we want to deal with an insert effect.
Hey, we first met. That was a long,
so if it's set to mono and I put a insert on.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home.
So we'll come over here.
And your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you caught me too.
All right, so we adjust the mix here. So as we listen to this,
now I'm so in love with you.
But this effect is in mono since it's a mono track. So if we just kind of, so now I'm going to switch the channel to stereo.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot.
So now all the effect processing is on stereo. So it's not necessarily like a right click, but just kind of. So now all the insert effects are in mono, but clicking here, so we have a mono source that's going on to processing with stereo processing or mono processing. that you could just switch. So let me know if that's kind of what you wanted to do. I didn't know, like, maybe the very first part of your question got cut off, watch addicts. So let me know if that's helpful for what you want to do. All right, let me just make sure. All right, so we have Stefano checking in from Italy. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we see Raw Justice Hip Hop has a question. Hey, Greg, I forgot, if I turn on my audio interface before opening Cubase, all the settings reset. Is there a way to save them so I don't have to reconfigure everything? So, Cubase will try to, have, like if you had a laptop and you had your audio interface set up and you take your laptop away and you wanted to do work, while on a plane somewhere and you don't want to take your audio interface to do that, Cubase will switch it to, and you'll get a little message saying, this audio interface that was here last time isn't here. Where do you want the audio to go to? So, and then it's going to try to route the audio somewhere. So, if you always wanted to use that interface, have it powered on before you start Cubase, and then you could just, you don't have to do any configurations with that. You can save, if you go to your audio connections, you could save like your inputs, outputs, and your control room as presets. And you could save, so your ins, outs, and your control room can be saved as presets, but the other ones can't. But you could save those presets for one particular audio interface if you wanted to. But it may be quicker just to exit out Cubase, restart with the audio interface connected. All right, Raw Justice Hip Hop asks, is it possible to bounce or render separate tracks for each drum voice in Beat Designer? So we could think of Beat Designer as kind of like the sequencer, and what we're going to do is actually just say, when we're working with splitting stuff out, it's going to be dependent upon the instrument itself. So let's say if I want to come over here, let me activate this. So right now we could see, okay, I have within Groove Agent, all right, and I'll just load up different kit here quickly. Okay, so when I go to my Beat Designer, which is a MIDI insert, so right now we'll come over and I'll just clear. Okay. All right, so let me just solo this. All right, so I can get. We're going to build. All right, make sure I'm on the right. All right, so say I come here and I want to do just a quick. All right, so now if I have this particular pattern, one of the things that we could do is, as this is playing, if we want it to just come over and we'll say, I want to insert the pattern. I'm going to move my cursor here back to measure 1, and I'll just insert the pattern currently at the cursor. So we're going to take this one pattern and it's now inserted. Okay, so I'm going to take off the beat designer. So we have this particular pattern that's now playing. Okay, and what we want to do is just split the sounds here. So let's say I want to take my kick and I want that to go out of output 2, and let's take my snare out of output 3, and I want the hi-hat out of output 4, and I want the clap out of output 5. So now that we've split this up, as we go to render in place, we can now come over. We want to choose the complete signal path, and we say render. Let me just make sure I did it right here. So we're going to take these separate files, and now that these are being sent to different outs, when we go to our render in place, so if you're going to drag it in, so go to your export, render in place, and we could choose try complete signal path. I'm not going to use a custom name. I'm not going to mix down. So, or another method could be just to come over, and if we have, let's see if we could do it without having, so if we come over, let's say we have our pattern playing. All right, let me just load up the right kit. Sorry, went one level of undo too much. Okay, so let's say we'll just do for this kick, snare, and hi-hat. All right, so if we also just come over to export audio mix down, so here, let's say if we want to go to multiple, so I think if we find our urban ballads, we just see if okay, so we see our instrument channels here. Then, so we see our kick, snare, hi-hat, and clap. So at this point, I'm going to turn off our export queue, and we'll say, let's create an audio track. And we'll say export. And now we could just have those particular tracks automatically stemmed out for you. So at this point, just come over. So, if we have this particular pattern, you could also just say, okay, I want to, let's insert the pattern at the cursor. And from there, you could just do your export audio mixdown, and you'll see under the VST instrument channels, then you could just export the different output groups directly there. And you could do render in place as well once, but it's the beat designer is just kind of playing the MIDI, and the sound and the routing is going to be set in the instrument that you're playing it through. All right, so a question on VariAudio. Is there a function in VariAudio you can click on and the software runs through the entire track, making corrections as needed? So it's not really designed to do corrections as needed. What you can do if you're in kind of a scenario like that, let's say we have our vocal here and we're in VariAudio. So, if you had to accomplish something along those lines, if you're looking for a quick, easy fix, is just to select all of the different nodes or segments, and you could just correct the pitch right here for all of the tracks. So if you want it to be very strict or somewhere in between, you could see it visually kind of move the different elements to being less in tune to being more in tune. If your note is in tune, it probably won't be affected by this, but this way you could kind of globally treat an entire track all at once with kind of the same level of in-tunedness, if you will. All right, so we see Witty Music says if I click play on an audio clip in the pool, it glitches. In the beginning of the audio clip, is not clear. My buffer is 512, and I have a very fast Mac. So I was playing with this actually right before the stream started, and I thought that maybe having maybe it was plugins that might be causing it, that might be causing the latency. So when I come over here, every time that I just kind of play directly from the pool, here it's pretty, it's like, so let me know if you're using kind of the play tool there. If you're just doing it like this. I'm too tired. In light we lay all this love. And also make sure that that the sample rate of the project is matching the sample rate of the file in the pool, because you may have a file that is, if it's kind of maybe glitching at the very beginning, maybe it's converting the sample rate. So if you go to your project settings, which you can do from your project menu to project setup, or hit Shift plus the letter S, make sure that the sample rate of the file is matched with the sample rate from the pool. But every time that I do it here, day after, it's clear without any delay or hesitation. And I tried adding like a bunch of plugins to see if maybe the latency could be affecting it, imposed by plugins. But if you try let me know if you try a very simple project with like one audio file, if it still behaves the same way. But it seems to kind of work as expected for me. All right, great to see John Flowers on. All right, so you see Rolling Stuff says, many thanks, Greg. You sorted my problem in one. I had selected CC11 expressions rather than articulations in the lower editor lane. Thanks again. Glad it was you're one mouse click away from happiness. So Fly V just says, do all samples used need to match the BPM of a song exactly, or just close, or not at all? So, some samples, that aren't musically related. So let's say you have just like a kind of like a crash sound or something like that. So that sample, you may just have to line up to start. But if it's not like a rhythmic thing, like it's just like a, maybe like a snare drum, or maybe a cymbal crash, something like that, then that doesn't have to work. But you could have, you could have audio that's recorded completely to many, people don't record audio. They think of it like an analog tape machine, depending on your perspective and probably your age, whereas a lot of people don't think of things as bars and beats. A lot of audio engineers just think of, we're going from 0 seconds to 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Where if you're kind of approaching it from a sequencing perspective, you may say, we're doing 96 bars. But there may not be a correlation between the bars and the project for some people if your master timeline is set to seconds. And if your master timeline is set to seconds, you could record audio and drop samples in for replacement that don't synchronize with the BPM. When it's helpful for it to synchronize with the BPM, that's when you're maybe you have a loop and you want a loop to fit into an existing project. So that is helpful in that scenario. So they don't all have to fit, but certain scenarios it makes sense for it to fit, and others not. So it kind of really depends on the context. It's probably not a great answer, but. All right, music. Cow just says, hi Greg, Cubase 14 Pro, Mac Studio M3. When I play with some Arturia or Native Instruments presets, the sound sometimes changes by itself or becomes very low. What could be the reason? Thanks. So make sure that when you're doing the sound, it could be, a lot of times some sounds can be quieter than others. So as you go through different presets, not every preset is going to have the same ambient level. Like a soft pad may be, may come off softer than something with a lot of attacks like drums. So those different things. It could also be some sounds, like if we come over to this cello sound that we saw here, so depending on the instrument that you're working with, so if we go to like a legato, this may be very soft because some of the sounds are designed to get louder and have their dynamics derived from using like a MIDI CC message. So this may be like, or if you use like Italian Symphonic Orchestra or like a string patch, like, why is this soft? Because it may need a controller to control the dynamics. So some presets may, you may have to grab like your modulation wheel or expression wheel to do that. Also make sure that, sometimes if you open up like a MIDI monitor plugin, sometimes there could be controllers that are kind of outputting data unexpectedly. So a lot of times People may move like the pitch bend wheel, and the pitch bend wheel and modulation wheel are often right next to each other on the same circuit board. So if one breaks, the other one could just kind of transmit information. So sometimes you may have a MIDI controller that's just kind of continually spitting out data, even though the knob is the same. So if you open up the MIDI monitor plugin, you could see if there's any kind of unnecessary MIDI information that's being transmitted with that. All right, so let me know if that's helpful. All right, great to see Dennis Kern checking in from Minnesota, Minneapolis area, Woodbury. All right, and we see Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset. All right, so we see, hi Cheryl from Maryland. He just says, hello everyone using Cubase 14. How do I copy the orchestral template it comes with and attach it to my own template? Thanks for all you do. All right, so let's say I'm starting off with the template here. Okay, so let's say let's do a new project. I'm going to do a simple template here. Okay, so we start off, this is my simple template, and now I want to incorporate all of the orchestral template with inside of this one. So what I could do now is I'm going to do a new project, and let's go, I think it's under the production, we'll see the Symphony Orchestra template. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to activate it. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to just save this as a project. So I'm going to do save as, and I'll put it onto my desktop. We'll call this May 30th, 2025. Okay, so I'm going to close this template. And now what I want to do is we're going to activate the original template here, and I'm going to go to import tracks from project. We'll go find the May 30th, 2025. I'm going to select all and hit OK. So now all of those tracks have now been incorporated into the existing template of our signature tempo electric guitar right there, and our vocal. So we've now incorporated that, and if we wanted to save this as a new template, we could just click Save As Template. So take the second template, like the orchestral template, save it as a project, and then go back to your original template, and then go to File, Import Tracks from Project, and you're going to choose the project that you saved from the second template, and then you want to import those tracks, select all, and then you could import all those tracks directly into the existing template. I'm going to paste the link for the Zoom meetup. That will be in about an hour and 20 minutes. Look forward to seeing a bunch of familiar faces and meet new people from the live stream. All right, wonderful to see Captain Energy Music on from outside Harrisburg. All right, Tony Trunzo asks, Greg, is it possible to create a drum chart from a stereo audio drum track? I've tried converting audio to MIDI, then go to the score editor, but the drum score doesn't look right. Too many tie signs. Yep. So probably if you have Spectral Layers Pro, there's kind of a way to do this. So let me just. Sorry, let me just do a new blank project. All right, so let's come over here. Let's say we have kind of a drum loop here. All right, so if you have Spectral Layers Pro, what this could allow you to do is come over. So I'm going to open up Spectral Layers Pro, and now we could go into the modules, and we're going to say unmixed drums. Okay, so now when we do this, I'm going to drag my kick drum out. And we see I'm going to drag out my snare. And let's say hi-hat. Okay, so now we come over. Okay, so I'm going to bounce these three files. So I'm going to go audio, bounce selection. Then I'm going to just come to my very first file here. Let's just create a MIDI track. Okay, I'm going to say, and we'll call this drums. I'm going to go to my hit points here in the drums, and we're going to say, let's create MIDI notes. And I want this to be on C1, and we're going to put it onto the first selected track. Okay, I want to go to my snare. Let's go to our hit points for my snare. We'll create MIDI notes. I want to put this onto D1, and we're going to put this select the track here. So we'll put it on the first selected track. And we'll do the same for our snares. So let's come over. And we'll put this on F#1. Okay, I'm going to merge these three parts together that are all stacked. And now when we go into our score editor, Okay, so now we've converted this into MIDI. And let's see if we need, let's go into, we may have to go into our instrument settings. Let me assign a quick drum map for this. And now you could see once we've assigned a drum map, we can see that you're going to have your drum notation just kind of laid out for you right there. So take your audio loop. If you have Spectral Layers Pro, break it apart, do the hit point detection for each, put it onto one MIDI track, assign like a GM drum map to it, and then when we go into your score editor, you can take that from your particular. So if we listen to our original, we can now just kind of come right over here, look at it in the score editor, and I will take off the mute solo. So that's how you could do it. So, but Spectral Layers Pro would help a lot. All right. Shubra Deep asks, how to use external hardware, Yamaha Modi X6 as a VSTI. So it's not going to work as a VSTI, but we could create an external instrument. So what you could do is come over to your studio menu, go to your audio connections. We'll see external instruments. We need to connect your Modi X6 directly to an audio input on your audio interface that Cubase is using. So we're going to take two outputs and we're going to tell it where it's connected to in, so we're going to say it's connected into these two inputs. So now when we go to add an instrument track, we can say we want to go under external plugins. You can see your Modi X6 and you say let's add a track. And as the track is added, it will now allow you to send MIDI to the device. The audio out of the device is being fed to inputs of the audio interface, and that allows the audio from that to get transmitted over. And at this point, we could run it through our EQs and various plugins for processing. So go to your studio menu to audio connections, go to your external instruments, and then you can just simply tell it where it's connected in, and then it can be brought into the VST world, allowing it to be processed. All right, so we see Benny's out on a gig, and he's just joined to hit the like button. Thanks for doing that. All right, Chiluminate asks, any function in version 14 that resembles AI-generated vocals like Yamaha Vocaloid? If yes, please demo. So nothing that's included, but you can just simply, use Vocaloid or several other tools as well. All right, so we see Randy checking in from Dallas-Fort Worth, from Radar the band. We have Kerwin Young joining from Atlanta, Georgia. All right, so we have Rick as Bratman Studio checking in from Whittier, California. He's looking forward to the Zoom. All right, so we see Birdman just says how to set up Scalar 3. So I don't have a license of Scalar 3, so I can't really show how to set it up. But you may not need it. There's a lot of stuff that you could do inside of Cubase. So let's say if we have some MIDI parts here. Once you go into the scale assistant in Cubase, here we can say, okay, I only want to show notes that are within, we could do a lot of kind of scale editing functions, and we could also, so let's say if I'm here, we're in the key of, looks like I made a cool spaceship there. All right, so let's say I am in the key of D. I could just say, we could go to and say, okay, I want to snap my pitch editing. So if I want to just come here, I could only move notes within the key of D. I could also filter the view. So if I want to come over here, we could see the view of only used notes or notes that are used with the scale assistant. So while you don't have a license, that the current scale assistant functionality built into the key editor, you may be able to get to do what you want to do. What I think a lot of people use Scalar for within that. So, all right. So we have Balsa checking in from Montenegro. Just says, hope you're doing well. All right, Birdman just says, why does Media Bay pause when going through samples? All right, it's just tested. It's always seemed pretty responsive to me. So sometimes if it's a virtual instrument where it's going to be loading up different instrument sounds, maybe, but let's say if I'm here and I just, so where you see like the little waveform indicating an audio file. That seems pretty fast. Where sometimes it could be slower is if it has to load an instrument. So if I come here, I go, oh, why don't I hear it? It's loading up an instrument in the background. So I do that. It's going to load up an instrument. So that may not be as instantaneous depending on how long it takes to unload the previous instrument and to load up the instrument to preview the patterns here. But for just audio loops, it seems pretty straightforward and responsive. So as I come over here, but let me know if yours works differently than that. All right, Uno Momento wants people to whack the like button. All right, Dennis Kern's question is, I have Cubase 14 and all my recording templates are empty. Are they supposed to be? So I think depending on, let's just take a quick look at the hub. So some of them may be, like these might be dependent on if you have Steinberg UR hardware. So maybe if you don't have Steinberg UR hardware, that these might be templates that are specifically for UR interfaces with all the internal DSP routing and built-in effects. So if you don't have a UR interface or an MXR, AXR, you may not see entries in the recording. But if you see entries over here, that's probably why. So, but let me know if you have a Steinberg interface. All right, so we've seen Jazz Dude says just load scalar as like a VST instrument, and Birdbin just says I want to route it to other instruments. So if you would probably need to take this scalar, like if I opened up a Groove Agent instance here. So let's say I open up Groove Agent SE and I want this instrument to transmit MIDI to a different instrument. So this instrument itself, when I go to in my MIDI input, we can see that Groove Agent shows up as an available output. So you'd probably want to make sure that the instrument itself, that the plugin, the Scalar 3, has a MIDI output port so that the MIDI data can be routed anywhere just like any other MIDI data. So that's generally how plugins work. All right, Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas asks, I use Vocal Writer for volume fader automation, but it only works if Vocal Writer is enabled. Is there a way I could print the automation so I can close Vocal Writer? All right, so let's say I'm using
Cause I have tried all the equations to spend another 1,000 nights. Cause I have tried all the...
All right, so I'll just put these on. All right, so let's say I had automation kind of going on here. So I'll just open up quick. I know it's not the same tool, but let's say if I come here to my volume and I'm just going to automate these controls here.
Spend another 1,000 nights.
All right, so imagine this is my Vocal Writer.
So we tried, but did we try?
And it's kind of doing its thing.
And I don't know if I have it in me.
All right, then let's say the last one, we'll have it get louder.
And I haven't found the answer yet.
All right, so now he plays back. We'll see that all these,
and I don't know if I
that we have the actual parameter working and automated. So if you're doing that and you want to apply the plugins to the files, so we'll make this really large so we can see that we're going to have pretty consistent volume here. And if we now come right over here and choose to render in place, so we'll go to our render settings, we'll choose just our channel settings. So what this is going to do, we'll create these as separate events. And let me just make sure I don't have this armed. So now the effect of the plugin, and we'll just compare the originals at the top. But now that we've rendered in place, we can see where I faded out, where we faded in, and then faded back out. So the effect of the insert, so once you select the events, if you want to burn or embed those particular inserts, just go to your render settings to edit in place. And if it's like an insert effect, which is probably what I assume it is, you could just go to your channel settings, and then that would automatically embed the Vocal Writer so you don't have to have it on all the time, but you kind of get the end result of it. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom meetup link one more time. Get started in about an hour. All right, Illuminate asks, hi Greg, what's the best way to route a MIDI signal out from version 14 out to an external keyboard with a vocoder and then record the analog mic input processed by the vocoder back into 14? So I assume that if you're going to just, I assume that the microphone is connected to the keyboard. So I would have a MIDI track automatically, set to be the carrier into the keyboard. Have the audio, the microphone is, I'm assuming, connected into the keyboard where the vocoder is, and then take the analog. I would just take the analog outputs of the keyboard that has the vocoder, connect them into your audio interface, and just simply record it as audio right back in. That way you could send the MIDI out, send a microphone, the microphone signal, I assume it's connected to the keyboard, take the audio output of the keyboard, and then just connect the audio outs to audio ins on your audio interface, set those ins as an input, for an input on a channel in Cubase, and record it as audio. All right, so we see from a question for Terry Gray, that's directed to Jazz Dude. Says, what's the setting to make an automation lane appear when you click on something in a plugin? So if you go to your automation settings, you could hit F6 by default, go to settings, and then it's just reveal parameter on right. So now if I'm automating something on this particular, say I have a plugin here on this track and I'm automating, so say I do this and I want to move the parameter, now that lane automatically appears whenever automation is written. And you could also just come right over here, right click, and if it's like for VST3 plugins that are kind of written, you could also just say, okay, I want to show the mix, right click and show the mix automation track, and you could open up automation lanes for specific parameters just by right clicking on them. So, but a lot of companies don't do that part of the VST3 implementation for some reason. All right, Dennis Curran asks, how do I stop my plugins from disappearing when I change focus from Cubase to, say, a web browser? So I think, it could be one of those situations where sometimes there's, like when everyone wants something on top. So I think, like, if I come over here, let's say I open up a web browser. All right, so we can see that now when we go back, that the plugins disappear. So I think since it isn't part of kind of like the core application, I know so that as soon as you kind of go back, that it's there, but this, it may be that, how the operating system is dealing with it. I know that Steinberg did make some changes for this with video. So if you have a video window open, that the video would automatically not close in the background, but I think the plugins will, but I can pass that along. But let me know like what plugins you need to see while the web browser is open. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped. All right, so Dallas LaRue just asks, my playback in Media Bay suddenly stopped working again. I checked all the settings in Control Room and Media Bay. So, you know, when I come over here.
It's found home, but I got it wrong.
So sometimes maybe just going to the audio connections, you know, because generally it's like if I go to my Control Room here and I turn mine off, you could try turning on and off your Control Room and see if that settles it. But now, so let's say my Control Room is disabled and I do my routing, let's say right from here.
And I don't.
So now that the Control Room isn't active, so but let's say I have this not connected and I go to Control Room. So now.
And I don't. It's anywhere. So we try. It's anywhere. We fell in love.
So maybe try turning off Control Room and turning on and see if that resets it for you, Dallas. All right, great to see Pertti Komenen checking in from Finland. We have Rob Schmedicke. And his question is, my Logitech Bluetooth QWERTY computer keyboard is triggering a low A note on some of my VST instruments when I hit this space bar. Use the space bar to start and stop the transport. Okay. This is a hard one to figure out, but I think I could get you there. I had kind of the artist BT call me up and says I tried with ChatGPT for hours and I couldn't get a response. And then I figured it out for him. So let me just see if we could get this. I think I have a project that will. So if it's something like that, like anytime that we go to so I'm here and I start and I get that note. So what it is I'm gonna you could kind of find like there's gonna be probably just one instrument here. So I'm going to open up the mix console so we could find it. All right, let me just. So I think it's on this. So kind of find the instrument and what it is. And this, if you go into the expression map, all right. So you see when I hit the space bar, I just get this note that's constantly on every time I hit the space bar. So come over. We're going to just like double click on an event on that track, and we're going to go to the expression map setup. All right. And what I'm going to do is just click on, I'm going to add a slot, and I'm going to move that slot to the very top. So now, if I did this right, the low note has gone away. So just kind of in the expression map, go to the expression map setup, click on the little plus sign. That could add a sound slot and move that all the way to the top, so the very top sound slot is blank. And then I think that will solve the problem if that's what you're running into, Rob. So let me know if that's kind of what you're running into. See if I was clever today or not. All right, Balsa asks, I have 2 tracks with the same first 3 insert plugins. The rest are different. Can I link them and simultaneously control only those first 3 inserts that have the same without Q-Link? Okay, so let me just... Okay, so I've just... Okay, so... And I'll just add a quick insert here. Okay. So can I link them that simultaneously control only those first 3 inserts that they have the same without Q-Link? So I think Q-Link is going to be really the only way to do this. So if I want to come over here to... So, you know, and you don't necessarily have to have it turned on here. You could just hold down Alt or Option plus the Shift key. So if I want to come over to this plugin here, so I want to switch it to my Echo Can. So when we come over to Reverence on this, let me just make sure I have it set correctly here. Yeah, so you can see that it switched it on, but I don't know of a way to do it. I think it's pretty simple to use the Q-Link. Let me know if like the Q-Link is kind of a workflow impediment for you on that. But I think that using the Q-Link is going to be, it's like kind of a perfect scenario for using the Q-Link. All right, so Tony Trunzo says, thanks, Greg. I have Spectacles Pro, and that drum part looks spot on. You're a champion. Thanks again. So you're welcome. All right, wonderful to see Lawrence Koch from Barn Door Recording. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped. All right, we see David M. checking in from Liverpool. Says, hoping that everyone is well. All right, so we see Music Cacao just says, hi, correction. Problem happens after I record the MIDI. It plays normally the first time, but then the sound changes. I have to switch to another preset and then back to the original one to fix it. So maybe there's, check to make sure. Sometimes if you're doing like for a MIDI part, or that's probably an instrument track, let me just add an instrument track here. It could be that, if you have the MIDI in the inspector set, you could see, sometimes if you have, check to see, if you're running any like MIDI inserts. So let me just come here. So, if you come here, like the MIDI volume, could be reset when using in the inspector, but check to see, let me know if you're using any like MIDI control plugins. So sometimes what could happen is, some people will set like, okay, I want CC7 here for main volume, and I want that to be 52. So, and if you have the volume up here, and then when it cycles to the beginning, it will get the value set to back to 53 regardless of this. So sometimes you could have kind of multiple ways of having CC data. Some of it could be embedded in the part. Some of it could be when the track starts to play from the beginning, if you're using like a MIDI control to set like static known CC levels in your part, those may get reset as soon as you do that. One other thing you could do is go into, whenever you have kind of like, weird stuff with MIDI that's kind of repeating, it could be that there's, some other information in there that you're not aware of. So let's say, like here, if we have a bunch of notes, let's put in, let's say some pitch bend data. Let's put in some other CC. So I want some modulation. I want some volume. So let's say you just have, but when you look at this, let's say aftertouch is another notorious one. But let's say when you look at it in the key editor, you may only see velocity. But try going into the list editor and see if there's any other kind of unexpected MIDI messages. This will show you every single MIDI message in a list, an event list. That, this could be probably a bit more surgical of an approach. And at that point, you could, see if there's any MIDI information that's causing a volume change. So it could be that, you wrote, if I come here and I record it after touch, I'm pressing down on my keyboard, and then I will go ahead and just merge that. So now we go to like a list editor. This could expose like oh, I didn't intend to have all those aftertouch messages. So look in the list editor and see if there's any MIDI data in there that's kind of being a bit nefarious. All right, Blue Snake says, hi Greg, is it easy to change the tempo with different kinds of tracks, instruments, audio, MIDI track, etc.? So yeah, you could do it easily kind of with all the tracks. You just want to make sure, MIDI, will, generally do it directly by default. With audio, you may have to tell the audio to be in musical mode. So I'll show you that quickly. All right, so let's say if I was wanting to do audio, I would need to, select all of, I could select all of the audio events and make sure that they're all in musical mode. And we could also do this in the pool window where we can see kind of our original tempo. But now if I'm going to add just a quick tempo track. And once the tempo track is active, now that we kind of know what the original audio file tempo was, like as we're playing, I could just kind of draw in tempo changes here, and my audio MIDI would just start to slow down. So, or if I speed up. So audio, you just need to place it into musical mode and have kind of the original tempo value set. And with MIDI, you just, that will kind of automatically follow different tempo changes. So it's pretty easy to do. All right. AK Kov asks, is there a way to select the MIDI part and the track at the same time? So I think there's preference. So let's go to your preferences. I think it's going to be under editing and maybe project. Let's see. Let's see if it's under. All right, so you see this, if you go to the preferences or settings to editing, you'll see track selection follows event selection. So now that I select an event, the track is selected accordingly. So if I come here, select that, we see the track is selected once the event is selected. And then if you have this, you could always right click, and I think that there's a like select all events on the track just by right clicking here, select all events. So if you have like 14,000 events, you could do that, or conversely, just with that preference, select a particular track or select a particular event, and then the track is selected. So preferences, editing, and then track selection follows event selection. All right, so we see from Balsa, just says, any tips on using the tape machine algorithm for time stretching but keeping the new pitched sound in 440 hertz tuning? I love the sound that it produces, but don't want the new sample to be flat or sharp. So probably if you're loving the sound of it, the only thing that's changing the sound when you're in tape algorithm is going to be, you know, that, and for those that aren't familiar with this, so I'll just revert this project here quickly. So, you know, there is a tape algorithm. All right, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select all of my audio tracks and we're going to switch it to the elastic tape. So if we don't change, when we change our tempo now, it slows down. And that changes the pitch. Now, if you like that sound, it's probably because the pitch is changing. If the algorithm is set to, you know, a normal elastic here. So let's say I come over and we just, you know, if I want to adjust the tempo without affecting the pitch, I would just not use the tape algorithm. So as I slow down here, it keeps the same pitch. But the tempo is different. So if you don't want the pitch to change and leave, you know, A equals 440 tuning, you know, just use like a time algorithm or a pitch algorithm. So all right, so we see from Watch Addicts, I'm afraid I'm missing still part of it. I just see audio only, right side per Cubase meter in my ears, and yet loading Apple Music player, left and right speakers are sounding. Should I reinstall Cubase? All right, so I still fear I'm missing beginning of this, Watch Addicts. But make sure that when you're, you know, it sounds like if maybe you're only hearing like the right side. If that's the case, it could be like maybe check your audio connections, you know, make sure that the routing of your tracks are going to a stereo out. And we can say your stereo out is, if you're using a control room, we can say not connected. Make sure that your control room is, so I have a monitor set up. These are going like outputs 1 and 2 generally of your audio interface to, so make sure that these routing definitions are correct. Also in the control room, there are the, you know, when you come over here to channels, if you're only hearing one channel, it could be that if you clicked on channels that you may have bypassed one of the channels here. And make sure also when you go to your down mix presets, if you're only hearing one side, mono should still be mono but out of 2 speakers, but make sure that you're not doing anything in your down mix presets. Yeah, so watch Addicts 12. I still fear I'm missing, and maybe if I'm still off, maybe someone else is catching the first part. That would be helpful. All right, so Balsa's question. Hey, Greg, can you explain add new track preset instead of new instrument MIDI track, etc.? What data and settings can be stored and loaded when using the options? So track presets, are intended so when we open up a particular track that it doesn't associate the media with it, so not the parts. It's going to give you basically the inserts. You're going to get the volume panning. You'll get the inserts, the channel strip, and the EQ and the pre-section. So it's not going to include the send effects because send effects are contingent on another track being utilized. So everything that's kind of self-contained. The routing isn't going to be preserved because we want like the track preset for you to be able to just kind of drag and drop it and have, the effects, the EQs, the volume and panning preserved and channel strip. So it'll be that is what's stored when you save a track preset or an instrument preset. Will be all the settings of the plugin, but it's not going to save like if it's being routed out to a group, routed out to an effects channel, because then it's kind of leaving its own separate entity. It's like self-inclusive track where that preset could work on in any scenario. All right, so Bratman Studio just says, hey, Greg, what is the best way to add a big reverb on a snare only that happens once every 4 bars? The rest of the time it has normal reverb. You could just automate the snare, automate the reverb on and off. So let's say if I wanted to come here and we'll just make our snare. Let me just... All right, so I'm going to add just an obnoxious reverb to my snare here. Okay, so let's say I just want to come here. Let's automate. So I could just come here as I... So now, if I just rewind that. So you could just, and if you could just come over and say, okay, this is where this, we could say, okay, I want an automation point here on this snare and a 4th snare. I want that automation point to rise. And let me just... So now if you wanted to even just, if you have a pattern kind of like that, you could just say, okay, let's just duplicate. I'm going to just copy that selected pattern, and then you could just have that particular pattern of automation copied. So you could just say, okay, I select these two bars and I want that same pattern. You could just do it like that, but I would just automate the send. If you programmed it in the pattern editor, there's also some tricks I could show with that, but that's probably the easiest way to do it. Okay. All right, so we see from Terry Gray says thanks Greg, and Chiluminate says thank you. All right, Balsa just says, question, how to set up Talkback mic in my control room if my interface only has 2 mic inputs and 1 stereo out. Mic input 1 is for the recording microphone. Mic input 2 would be for my Talkback mic. So yeah, you could use any available input for that. So a lot of times people that are utilizing a Talkback mic may be, recording people, like multiple people, and may have an audio interface with multiple inputs and multiple outputs. So, but if you only have 2 inputs, you could use input 2 of your audio interface and go to your audio connections, and in the control room and where we see your Talkback mic, just route that to any available input port right there. All right, question from FlyV. Says, do root note keys need to be in a pattern? So generally, I think that there are many musical genres with common patterns. I think just about every music genre has kind of known patterns, whether it's Baroque music to blues music to jazz, so there's very common patterns, but you don't have to have patterns. So. Okay, so I think we finally got maybe the beginning of Watch Addict's 12 questions. It says, every time we boot Mac and open Cubase, the audio outputs and setup are not connected. This is my Parkinson's friend's computer. He wonders why we have to reset each time. So one is make sure that, the audio interface is booted up and turned on before you start Cubase every time. Generally Cubase will always remember the last settings, and you'll get a message if that audio interface is not present, or maybe the audio interface is being utilized and being kind of taken over by something else. It's usually not such an issue on Mac OS. But if you get, and also something that can help is if you just come to your audio connections here, try going to your inputs and outputs and try just saving a preset. That's helped some people. But it could be a permissions thing, but also just in the audio connections, just create a preset here. for the inputs and outputs and see if that recalls it. Someone mentioned it, that helped them on a live stream, I think this month. So. All right, so we see from Cedric Hawkins, says, hey Greg, 2 questions. What's the process for embedding it says IRCS, I assume ISRC codes. So ISRC codes, we don't embed them in Cubase, but you could embed them in Wavelab. So if we open up Wavelab here, I'll show you where you could do that. I know it's not in Cubase, but if you have Wavelab, and so once you come over here, we could go to your album project, and then when you go to functions, you can go to like your album wizard, and here is where you could have it generate ISRC codes or get your ISRC or your UPC EAN codes. So it's not in Cubase, but it would be in Wavelab. All right, next question from Cedric. And how would I import a sample which half-speed playback option in the preview is represented in the wave that's imported? Okay. Okay, it says, how would I import a sample in which the half-speed playback option in the preview is represented? Okay. All right, so I'm sorry, I think I understand now. All right, so let me come over here. Let's get to our loops. Fine. All right, so now in 14, we can come over here. We can say, so we could preview at, all right, so let me just drag this out. So it looks like it's just automatically. So if I take that same file there and I do the same file, not at half speed. So we can see that it's automatically just, so this is the original file. This is at half speed. If we choose 2 times speed for the same loop, it'll be half the size of that. So it's automatically just calculated on import. So once you just, double click on it. So let's say, I have this track selected, my cursor's here. And then if we just double click, we could just have it, or just drag that right out, and you could see that the different samples are just reflected right there. Great to see you back on, Cedric. All right, I'm going to post the Zoom. We'll be starting in about 15 minutes. All right. All right, Dallas LaRue just says, I know you've shown it before, but could you show again ways of comping with version tracks? Okay. Let's see if I had, okay. Okay, so we want to kind of take a track version here and kind of edit multiple track versions. So let's say, I'll just, okay, so we'll come over. So I think we want to create a new version. Okay, and we'll just call this version, we'll rename it, we'll say comp. Okay, so let's say I want to take measures 1 and 2. So I'm going to copy, and we go to our comp, and I'm going to paste. Now I want to go to version 4 and say, okay, I like this from version 4. Copy. And paste. So you can basically just kind of say, okay, now we need this from version 5. Copy, switch to kind of like your comped version and choose where you want it to be pasted to. And then you can see take 1, take 4, take 5. So all these different ones are coming from different track versions. All right, BB23 King just says, what's the fastest way to set left and right locators? So if you command, if you want to set the right locator, it's just command and click at top, and alt or option they might be reversed between. So on a Mac, it's command, and it's kind of the physical position of the keys. So command and click at the top, and alt or option and click at the top. That will set the left and right locators. You could also, if you say, I want it to follow this event, hit the letter P. That will set the left and right locators to the selected event. And I think if you, and as Jazz Dudes mentioned, it's Command L, like for your song position. Let me see. Or maybe Alt L. So, and another method you could use is there's a preference where you could come over here and say, under editing, range selection, follows range tool, cycle follows range selection. So if you just have a range selected, you could just select a particular range here and then have the cycle markers automatically follow that. All right, AK Cov asks, is there a way to copy more than one insert to a different track in the mixer window? All right, so let's get to your mix console. Let's come over here to inserts. Okay, so if you grab the top area here, I'll just make this a little larger so you can see it. Hold down the Alt or Option key and just drag it to another part. So as soon as you hold down the Alt or Option key, you'll see the little plus sign. Then you could just drag and copy the inserts over. All right, wonderful to see Tim K on from Zeist in the Netherlands. All right, so we see from David M. Just says in Dorco Dynamics, go above the stave and they should be going below. No idea how to fix this. All right, so let's see if we can take a quick look at it. Or maybe if you're going to be, just for time's sake, David, if you're going to be in the Zoom meetup, which I know you usually are, I could show you in the Zoom meetup. You take a quick look at it. All right, AK Kov asks, question, is it possible to change an instrument plugin on an existing track with a different instrument plugin? So yeah, I'll show you how to do that. So let's say I want to switch this piano that's playing in Verve to a different instrument. Okay, so let's say I want to take this and...
I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
So I'm going to come over here to the VST rack. And we can see that this is going into the piano here. So I want to just come here. And I'm going to load up, let's say, a different instrument. Say I want to load up the new etude. So I'm going to go to Hallian Sonic. And while that's still playing, we'll come over here to etude. So just kind of click on the name. And like I say, I want to go to the Grand 3. And we'll just come over, let's load up. So while it's playing, you want to go to FM, synth. So that's how you do it. So just kind of click in the name in the VSTI rack field there. All right, I know we had 2 questions that were mailed in, so I'll get to those before we migrate over to Zoom. So let's come over. Right. So this is a question, kind of a better way of doing this from last week. Someone wanted to take a, to blend just the affected signal with the normal track. And to kind of blend between and automate between those two. And someone had written in, it's like, oh, just use pre-fader. So it's a better method than I showed. So I wanted to show that. All right, let me just create a scenario here real quick. Sorry about that. All right, so say I want to take this guitar part here. right, so let me just get my guitar and we'll just make sure we're going to turn off. So what they wanted to do is basically kind of automate between the pure wet signal and kind of bring the dry signal in. So we're going to make this pre-fader. And all I had to do now is, if we wanted to start the guitar all wet, and then we could just bring the fader up to bring in the source signal. So as we bring this down, so that could be a quick, easy way. And if it's post fader, which is the default, as you bring this down, everything is brought down. But when it's set to pre-fader, the level of the signal going into the send isn't affected by the fader volume. All right, and we had another question. Let me just get to it real quick. Was, hey Greg, at some point I saw a YouTube video on attaching names to track colors. I can see those names when I start with a new empty song, but they're not present in older projects. I thought that name color associations would be universal between projects. Yeah, so when we go to kind of like your project colors setup, you know, each of these colors can have a name. So you can say, this is always drums, and this color is always percussion. This is vocals, whatever. All right. So as we come over here, so let's say we apply that, we can go to your project colors setup, and we can see now that we could colorize, you know, like within the project logical editor for the name, using the name. But one thing is, this isn't going to necessarily translate to older projects. What you can do is take this particular setting here, and if you save it as a preset, so let's say if we go to your color set here, and you could save it as, you could save this as a default. So, and then you could choose to just select the colors by name, but each project can have independent color settings for each project. So if you get a project from someone else, they may have completely different colors. It's going to maintain the colors whoever did the project initially, so that those colors are preserved regardless if you have different color settings. So the color settings are kind of project based, so you may have to just simply load up that preset and then resave it, and then the colors and the names will automatically be applied when the new preset is stored in the project. But generally the colors themselves are kind of migrated with the project. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the Zoom. And if you haven't done a Zoom meetup, this is a great way to kind of meet different people that are in the live stream. I'm going to post in the comments field one more time. Thanks for all the great questions from everyone. I'm going to paste the link and get the meeting started. And see if people are migrating over. All right, we see John Barry, Michael Marshall, Stefan, Memento. Tim Weinheimer, Matthew Elston, great.
My favorite.
See Rick, Lawrence. All right. Tim Weinheimer, Matthew Elston, great.
My favorite.
Lawrence.
Hello.
All right. Hey, Lawrence. Good to see you.
You too.
Matthew Elston. Great.
My favorite.
I think, Rick, we're hearing the live stream back through your sound. Just FYI.
Lawrence. Hey, Greg and everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Lawrence. Good to see you.
Hey, there we are. Too.
Matthew Elston. Great.
Hello.
I think, Rick, we're hearing the live stream back through your sound. Just FYI.
Oh, hang on.
Hey, Greg and everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Lawrence. Good to see you.
Hey, there we are. Too.
Matthew Elston. All right. I think you got it, Rick. Thanks. All right. We have David M. on. All right.
Everybody happy? Maybe not. Am I coming through?
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, Michael.
Okay. Hi.
Good to see you, Michael. All right. I'm just going to check back on stream side, see if there's anyone else that's...
Are we good now?
Yeah, I think you're all good. All right, so we have Tim K joining.
No video from you yet, Greg.
Yeah, I'll get mine on in just a minute.
It's all right. I wasn't hustling.
Yeah.
No feedback.
You got a haircut, Tim? Maybe he didn't hear me.
All right, John Costigan joining. All right.
So,
Give it a couple more minutes. Let's see who is pouring a drink. All right, we'll just wait another minute, and then I'll shut down the live stream. All right, I guess I'll shut down the live stream. So once again, we will be doing the next live stream on Wednesday. So everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and please make it over to the Zoom meetup. And we hope to see some new faces there. And we'll see everyone next week, if not on Zoom. Take care.
Well, we look like a bunch of